place for us to start, Beata, with this this new training, looking at a parts integration in more of a conversational style. Have you heard, it's a very classical term, a very classical maneuver and technique. Have you heard of a parts integration before?
Yes, I have.
Excellent. So just to find out where you are and your understandings, what is a parts integration in your mind?
Part integration is when I have a client who is not very sure of the somebody who wants to do something but don't do it and not sure why. So it's two opposite sides.
Excellent.
I want blue apple, green apple, but I eat the red one somehow, and it's two different things. Yeah.
Excellent. And when you think about your own life and the issues we have, when you'll have them, do you have things in your life that attain to two parts or two different conflicts working at the same time?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
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 So with the classical parts integration, everything you just said is 100% correct. So essentially the way we're going to look at it, and just to lay down the theory for it, but also look at the basis of this training program, is exactly what you said. It's when there's two parts of the mind, being conscious and unconscious, or conscious and subconscious, whatever you want to call it, are working in the opposite factor, okay? The problem is joined together, okay? And it's intermingled with itself, which lays down the confusion. If you imagine like a, you know, when you listen to your iPod and it seems like you wrap your headphones around the iPod, you put it in your pocket, but when you pull your iPod out, all the headphones are all tangled up with each other.
Yes.
That's the way I think about a parts integration. The earbuds are pointing out in different directions, but somehow they've knotted into themselves and it's very hard to untangle. Does that make sense?
A lot of sense, yes.
That's the parts integration we're going to look at. So essentially, it's the conscious mind wanting one thing that is very logical. It's very step by step. Okay, it's very goal orientated, as long as you stick to it being a logical process, like I must do this to get this, and then that'll happen, then that'll happen. But the unconscious mind points in the opposite direction and wants to do things in itself that it seems appropriate to the goal that you want consciously. So it's more about creative expression. It's more about spur of the moment things. Again, very, very goal orientated. And it does not like to be restricted in doing it one way. So you can hear the conflict already.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Why this occurs is very, very interesting. Why do you think people like you and me, especially our clients as well, have such issues, or why do you think a conflict arises outside of just two goals being wanted or having some sort of confusion? Why is it that the conflict exists and continues to exist in the first place?
It's an interesting question. Why?
Yes, have a think about it. Why does it remain conflicted?
Well, I believe that once upon a time it was one whole.
100% agree with you. That's a great place to start. So bear that in mind when we do this training. That's definitely the correct case.
And both of the parts aiming for the same goal, but somehow they are separated.
Excellent. Give me more of an explanation. Why do you think, well, actually this is the interesting part. Why is it, and I 100% agree with you, that once upon a time the part was whole, but at some point along the line, it got separated, and here's the key. It gets separated at the end, but it's joined in the middle, i.e. the confusion of it. Why is it that both minds point in the same direction, which is for the one goal? Why is there such confusion to unlock it? What are your thoughts?
It is because of outside influence.
Yep, outside influence is definitely. So if you look at outside influence, like environmental factors, okay, everyday living, like your stresses, your family life, your love life, being physical, being social, all those sorts of things as well, 100%. What else causes those issues? What else keeps that conflict intact and keeps people so confused, even though both parts are pointing to the same thing? And we'll look at that in a moment as far as why they're pointing the same thing and how that occurs. But why do you think the conflict's there?
Because of this belief that the outcome could be such and such.
Excellent. So a conflict in the belief, like, I want this thing, and the only way I can figure it out consciously is this way, and that way will never happen because of such and such. Do you see how that could be an issue?
Yes.
Okay, that's a very limited conscious thinking. So while the unconscious mind is trying to show you other ways to do it, it's almost like you're negatively hallucinating them and you're not seeing them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what else might be the case?
And conscious and subconscious mind. One is logical thinking, the other one is very abstract and,
yes,
like you said, with lots of possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the unconscious mind deals very abstractly, but what we tend to do, and you might find this with your own problems as well, is the results we're after, we seem to dismiss them because sometimes the answer we need is just too simple, and we think, oh, that can't work.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Probably should ring home true for you as well.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
What else could be the issue?
Is it left part of the brain and right part of the brain?
Yeah, you can get into that as well. So your left and right hemisphere doing totally different things. Or the corpus callosum, which joins those two parts, the firing networks and the membrane between the two working in overdrive. Absolutely. That could be more of a logical way to think about it. Okay. What else is occurring? Well, I'll give you this hint.
Mm-hmm.
Logically or consciously, there's only so much we can do with a conscious mind before even our best structure breaks down, i.e. the steps we put towards a goal, we run out of those steps, or the steps we have, we just can't see beside them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So with that in mind, if we can't do it consciously, we must almost give the job over to our unconscious, and it does it out of the spur of the moment. That's why we have aha moments. That's why we have ideas that come out of nowhere. That's why we can sleep and then wake up in the morning and seemingly have the answer that we needed all along.
Yeah.
Okay. If I was going to give you this as an idea, just see where you are. Who do you think, or what part of a client and yourself has more power and will always win the conflict? Because a conflict is just essentially a fight. Okay. Do you think the conscious mind would win or the unconscious mind would win?
Unconscious mind will win.
Why would that be?
Because consciously I can tell myself whatever I want to say to myself.
Mm-hmm.
But subconscious is the strong driver who is actually monitoring and driving all whatever I'm doing and how I'm doing stuff.
You're 100% correct. Your unconscious is all about your awareness. Okay. So essentially saying that once you consciously think, well, I can't do this, or you know what, I am going to do this. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to put these goals in mind. I'm going to do these steps. I'm going to get up at this time. I'm going to go to the gym at this time. I'm only going to eat this food. I'm never going to buy cigarettes again. I'm not going to argue with my partner anymore. You can do that consciously and you feel really good about it. It feels like you get some sort of control in your life. But then as soon as you forget about it and you do something else that bides your time or draws your awareness away, the old programs on the unconscious slip in and you end up doing the same thing over and over, but don't realize you are.
Yes.
It's like let's say you are about to go grocery shopping and you think, you know what, I should have some lunch before I go so I don't go to the shops and eat bad food. You get so rushed, you forget the lunch, and then you think, oh God, I'm going to the shops now. I'm about to drive through past a fast food restaurant. I'm really, really hungry. I'm not going to eat it. Okay, you go to the shops, you do your shopping, and by the time you finish your shopping, you're so hungry, you drive past the takeaway, you grab some takeaway, you start eating it, and then you start to feel the results of it afterwards because you've forgotten the first thing you said to yourself.
Yeah.
And that goal of wanting to lose weight, it was so outside of your awareness. Why? Because hunger was kicking in.
Yes.
And it was more important to survive at that point rather than worrying about going through a strategic diet.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Correct. And that's usually what happens with people, yes.
Yeah, and it's very, very common. As soon as you're not thinking about your goal consciously, the old unconscious program exists. And
it is difficult, if even possible, to constantly think about your goal.
Yeah, it is exhausting. And that's why, when we're training, we're teaching students, we're saying you don't set goals consciously, you do it unconsciously, and it goes on autopilot.
Yes.
Then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Why does the unconscious mind do this? Why does the goals that you have or the circumstances you want in your life, why does your unconscious mind almost seem like it's sabotaging you? You say things like, I want to get rich, I want this partner, I want to have this in my life, I want to do this. But as soon as you forget about those goals, the old negative programs kick in. Why does it seem that the unconscious mind is the bad guy? In this example, anyway.
I wouldn't say a bad guy. It is the social conditioning that's happened in my life, and I can only have certain way of thinking subconsciously because I was exposed to certain learnings through my life, and generally as a child, or maybe even before I was born. And that's what is deep there inside, and that's what is manifesting through all my life. And until it's changed, it's never going to be any different.
So why does your unconscious mind do this? I want to break it down as simple as possible. What you're saying is definitely correct. Why does it do this? If it was socially conditioned in you and it's not serving you anymore, why is it that it continues to exist?
To keep me safe.
Definitely to keep you safe. So let's play with this. This is known as the unconscious payoff. We all have it. Let me give you another example. I think these examples will clear this up. Let's say a young child walks over to a hot stove, puts his or her hand on a hot stove. What do you think is going to happen?
It's going to burn himself, yeah.
It's going to burn themselves, okay? It gets the sharp amount of pain. It activates the neurology. The unconscious mind goes into what I call protection mode.
Yeah.
And it instantly finds a way or constructs a lesson from the experience, which is, don't touch the stove, they're hot. You'll get burnt.
Yeah.
Okay, we've all had this. Okay, so that lesson gets ingrained, but the unconscious mind does it. Why do you think that is? Why doesn't the conscious mind kick in?
Why doesn't kick in?
Why does the unconscious mind take control of that experience and create a lesson from it?
Because this is the mind that is driving our life force. This is the biggest part.
That's it. The conscious mind at that point, there's no need for it.
Yeah.
Because we go into protection mode. The amygdala kicks in, which is your fight or flight or your protection mode. It's like the mind clears for a split second. The unconscious mind goes into overdrive, so you could say you're almost in a trance at that point. It abstracts the lesson, creates the lesson. So when the child sees the stove again, they know not to touch it. Doesn't mean they get it right, and it doesn't mean they won't try. But you'll probably see them, and you might experience this yourself. You know when you walk into a kitchen and let's say you're cooking on the stove and you've done your dinner or whatever, and it's been several hours after the stove's been on and it's cooled down, you can still find yourself a little bit wary to see if the stovetop's still hot, right?
Yes.
And you might touch it just lightly just to see, is it cold, is it warm, is it hot?
Yes.
That's the unconscious mind saying to you, well, I've already taught you this lesson that the stove is hot, don't touch it, you're about to touch it. I'm going to fill your mind with that thought so you think about it again.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So this is a scenario based on what I've just said right now. Is that all pretty clear so far?
Yes, it is.
So let me give you this example. Let's say a young boy goes to school, okay, and he's quite a skinny boy. And let's say he's in his, let's say he's gone to high school. Let's make him a bit more grown up, okay? He's very, very skinny, and all the bigger kids start to pick on him. Okay, they push him around, they bully him, they do things that kids do, which is sometimes very atrocious. Yep. And this kid has an experience of being bullied, maybe being beaten up, doesn't enjoy the experience, but then at some level, the unconscious mind clicks in and creates a lesson from it. What's the lesson that we could assume? We'll talk this out. What do you think the unconscious mind will learn and teach this kid about that example or that scenario? What do you think could be drawn from that?
Generally would be, I would say, in my opinion, negative lesson.
Yeah, definitely a negative lesson.
Yes, he would just keep telling himself there's something very wrong with him.
Yep, so it could be a complex thing, yes.
He isn't likable.
Excellent, yep.
He doesn't have many friends.
Doesn't have many friends. Excellent.
Difficult to interact with other people his age.
Excellent. So let's take those 4. So in order for the unconscious mind to do what it does, which is protect us, always push us towards health and safety, it needs to draw from that lesson and try and do something positive with it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And the positive is to try and teach you something so you avoid ever going through that situation again.
Yes.
Now, here's where the downside is. The unconscious mind doesn't always get it right.
No.
It gets it right because it finds something as quickly as possible to defend your honor, so to speak.
Yes.
And it's not that it's limited, it just rushes things because it's doing what it should do, protecting.
Yes.
And let's say, for example, the lesson at that very time, at that very scenario, the lesson that was drawn from it was, maybe I'm too skinny, I need to bulk myself up so I become one of the big kids and stop getting picked on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you see how that could be something that the unconscious mind might think of? Okay.
It's one of the options, yes.
Now let me give you this. There's 2 ways this kid could deal with this. He could either go to the gym, bulk up, so to speak, eat his chicken breast, eat his steak, and train for many, many years, and get bigger and musclier. Or, there's actually 3 options with this. Maybe he decides to take a self-defense class and spends maybe a year going through all the lessons, how to punch, how to kick, how to defend himself.
Yeah.
That's 2 ways. Or the 3rd way is the unconscious mind could abstract from the example and think, well, the quickest, and that's the key here, the quickest way to do this is to, at some level, gain an unquenching thirst or appetite for junk food to get really, really overweight, because at least he'll be a big kid. What do you think would have the most negative benefits in those 3 examples?
The last one.
The last one. So now what do we have? 10 or 15 years later? A very overweight person who can't stop eating junk food. Do you see how that all connects?
That is very interesting concept. And because this is, like you said, the fastest and the easiest way.
Yes.
Because exercising and, like you said, eating good, exercising for a long time takes time. Being good at self-defense takes time, so it's challenging.
Yes.
But then going and eating junk food,
yes,
it's the easiest way.
So let me give you this to add to this. What else are the benefits about eating junk food? I know that's a bizarre question. What are the benefits this kid could get from eating junk food, knowing that he's had a crappy experience?
The satisfaction of the taste.
Satisfaction of the taste. Yep, excellent. What else?
And the fact that he's going to put on weight.
Going to put on weight. So the unconscious mind, do you see the payoff is?
Yeah, the payoff.
The unconscious mind says, yes, we can eat the junk food. I'm going to get my payoff because you're now going to get bigger. So that's the way I can serve you best, by giving you this appetite for junk food. What else could someone get from junk food that's positive?
Socially meet other people there?
Possibly, absolutely. There's some abstract thinking in that. Definitely the unconscious might come up with that.
And I don't know, another one.
Well, so far so good. Let me give you these just as an idea, and let's see if you agree with them. Let's say possibly this child spends more time buying junk food that he gets ashamed eating. So in order to get past feeling ashamed, he hides himself in his house, in his bedroom, where he feels more safe.
Well, that's not positive.
Okay. It's not positive, absolutely, in the long run. But do you see how the unconscious mind could think that?
But it can be positive for
of course it can. It's positive for him because he feels safe sitting in his bedroom eating junk food.
Yes.
There's no kids around him. It has the negative connotations later on in life.
Yes.
But do you see how that could be at the very time the unconscious mind saying, this is the positive thing I want you to get from this. How far can I keep you away from these kids? Well, let's make you really, really crave junk food and make you feel ashamed about eating it so you stay indoors. Safety is indoors.
Wow.
Makes sense?
A lot of sense, yes.
Okay. So let me ask you this. You're a working hypnotherapist. Let's say this child or this now young adult. He's in his 20s now. Let's say that happened when he was 12 years old. He's been doing this for 10 years now. He comes to your office, morbidly obese. What's the first thing he says to you?
I want to lose weight.
I want to lose weight. Excellent. Okay. So here's the confusion. What would happen if you as a hypnotherapist had the ability to make him give up the junk food and eat healthy food? What do you think is going to happen?
He will lose weight.
Yep, he'll lose weight. Okay. Do you think he'll have any issues with losing weight?
If he changes his diet.
Do you think it would be clear-cut, smooth sailing?
No, it won't be, because it's not that easy. If that was easy, he would fix it himself and didn't have to.
So let me ask you this. Why can't he fix it? And why, if you went into your weight loss routine, why do you think it would ultimately fail, knowing what you know about the unconscious payoff?
Because his unconscious mind is there to serve him and keep him safe from other people, and it's just aiming for this.
Mm-hmm. So if you take away the very vice that it has, which is food, that is keeping the boy safe, do you think you'd get some sort of kickback from the unconscious mind?
Yeah, it won't work, because...
Of course you would. You're not satisfying the unconscious payoff. You're taking away the only thing, and that's the key here, the only thing the unconscious mind has come up with.
Yes.
So the unconscious mind is going to make things very, very difficult. You take away the food. Well, let's say, for example, let's say this young man goes to the gym, finds a personal trainer, does a weight loss, a diet, things like that. How do you think the unconscious mind could sabotage him as soon as he starts getting some sort of success? Because the unconscious mind's going to view it as, you can't take away the food because that's the only way I can keep you safe.
Yes.
What do you think is going to be sabotaging this young man?
There's unlimited ways.
Yeah, things like, I can't be bothered training anymore. It's too hard. I've got no motivation. I can't stick to my diet. Healthy food's boring. I don't have the right type of money to buy healthy. I get confused with all the diets. I keep getting injured. Does this not sound like, and this is not a criticism of you, because it's a criticism of me as well, are these some of the excuses you've said to yourself about certain things in your life?
Absolutely, yes.
We can all agree with that. And I have them too.
Yes.
It's because the unconscious payoff still exists. Let's take a smoking example, just so we can really get a clear understanding of this. Is this making sense in regards to the way you viewed a parts integration before? Is this giving you the highlights a little bit more extremely?
Absolutely. Yes. I have few aha moments already, so yes.
Yes. Okay. In teaching this, you know what's probably going to happen. The way that the little things that you have in your life that could associate to the little examples I'm giving you may start to change you for the positive as well. You've had this experience many times before.
Yes.
Okay. So let's play with this again. Let's say a young boy at school. Now you might be thinking, well, why do we keep going back to school when we're very young? That's when we're most impressionable. That's when all our learnings are taking place that grow up with us.
Yes.
We don't grow into our problems grow into us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's say a young kid is hanging around the wrong group of people at school, and the wrong group of people at school smoke.
Mm-hmm.
Now he has a dilemma. What do you think his dilemma is? He doesn't smoke, doesn't like cigarettes, and probably is not the most sociable person. Let's say he's new to the group. He's new to the school. Let's give you that example as well. He's new to the school, no friends, new to the area, and the only people he's found himself hanging around are people that smoke. What do you think is going to happen at this point?
Or he won't start smoking.
What do you think he would get? Or what do you think he's feeling by being at a new school? Because we need to find out what the payoff could be. What do you think he's feeling at a new school?
Lost.
Lost? Scared?
Not many friends.
Not many friends, yep.
Wanting to be accepted.
Excellent. So do you think he'd be feeling negatively?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Now this is a good lesson for yourself. Anytime you feel negative, okay, now this might be a little bit shocking to hear. Every time you feel negative, you have to realize that your unconscious mind goes into protection mode and might create a lesson from you feeling negative that won't serve you. Do you see why we end up having so many problems in life?
So what you're saying, that every time I feel negative,
yes, about something, or put yourself in a place where you don't feel right, or where you put yourself down, or you feel stressed out, your unconscious mind goes into protection mode, tries to make a lesson from it to avoid you feeling like that again. Now, if it gets it right, you'll burst through your own problems. If it gets it wrong, you'll find yourself with more problems than you can deal with.
So it gives some payoff, something to make.
Of course. Don't they say misery loves company?
Yes. Isn't that the road to addiction?
It could very well be. But regardless of whether it's an addiction or phobia, there's a payoff. It has to be, otherwise the problem doesn't exist. So let's take this young boy again. He's feeling negative. He's feeling ostracized at school. He's not feeling the way he wants to. He's missing his friends. He's probably walking around school and people are, giving him a hard time because he's a new kid on the block, so to speak.
Yeah.
And he finds himself in a situation where he's being allowed into a group. However, they're all smoking. Now, we could agree peer pressure right now is going to be the only thing in his in the back of his mind. Okay. So what do you think the unconscious mind is going to do that would create a negative payoff in the long run?
It's going to convince, not convince him, the subconscious mind going to be convincing to his logical mind to tell him that smoking is actually good and positive, and
Excellent.
to belong to the group, you need to smoke.
That's the key right there. The last thing you said. Brilliant. In order to be a part of the group and stop feeling ostracized, you need to smoke.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, it's a good thing for him, isn't it?
Yes, the payoff is good. I will belong to this group.
I'll be accepted. I'll get a new group of friends. People will listen to me. People will accept me. I'll become a part of this small high school family, if you want.
Yeah.
So the unconscious mind hasn't found anything better, and it can't come up with, why don't you go find new people? Because he's new, that's not existing. He can't think, the unconscious mind can't fathom that. The quickest way is, let's just join the bad kids, do what they're doing so I can become a part of them.
Yeah.
So he has his first cigarette. He takes a puff of it. He probably coughs. He feels disgusting, feels sick. They all have a laugh about it because they've all been there themselves because they can associate to him. Now he becomes accepted.
Yes.
Okay. So 10 years later, he comes to your office. What's the problem he's having?
Smoking.
I want to quit smoking. So what do you think would happen if you take away the cigarettes? What's left?
Isolation.
Yep. So what's left if you take away the cigarettes?
Well, the cigarettes are the protection to whatever situation he was years ago.
Excellent. And you've probably heard this from clients when people say, I enjoy smoking when I'm in a social group.
Yeah, a lot of people smoke just socially. Yes.
Okay. So what is this boy probably going to tell you the same thing? What he's really letting you know is I was accepted socially because I smoked.
Yes.
And now every time I try and quit, I feel, and this is the key, I feel that I don't belong anymore.
No.
Or I can't join in a group function or a group talking to people because I'm not good at it unless I'm smoking.
Yes.
Does that make sense as why this all occurs?
Yes, a lot of sense, yes.
And now if you go into your stop smoking routine, your client is essentially going to end up leaving your office, maybe doesn't smoke for a day or so, and then feels the unconscious mind kick into gear and say, well, the only way you can function as a human being and join other human beings is by smoking. You enjoy being social, but now you find yourself sitting in your apartment because you've got no friends, because you've given up smoking and they don't want to deal with you. It's of no consequence just to start it again because now you can be accepted again. Do you see how those problems just exist over and over and over again?
Yes.
It's why when your client comes to see you, when they say, I want to quit, you can't deal with their problem surface level.
No.
So what we need to do, and this is where the parts integration is a possibility, and that's important to emphasize now, is a possibility. This is to point out for people listening at home as well, the parts integration is only as good as every other technique. Meaning that there's no such thing as the best parts integration for a stop smoking. Or is parts integration only used for weight loss, as it's commonly expressed? Parts integration is just one possibility to fix the principle, and the principle is all problems have an unconscious payoff. So what we need to do, we're going to look at this through the parts integration, is understand what a client's payoff is unconsciously, and then essentially shift the way the unconscious mind is creating the payoff and give it something new, like a goal, like I want to quit or I want to have this and this, that still involves the payoff but in a new way.
Yeah.
So, for example, the smoker, if he thinks, and that's the key, if he thinks that he can only be social by smoking, we need to work out a way unconsciously that the unconscious mind can still have the payoff, which is social, being social, but without the smoking. Yeah. And then the smoking will get rid of itself because it's of no longer use anymore.
No.
Does that make sense so far?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. And going back to your other example of this child who was, the adult who was abused, instead of eating junk food, go and join self-defense class or gym or something. So you still have a payoff of getting physically big and looking good instead of eating junk food.
Exactly. Now let me give you this, and I have in my social group, I have a lot of people that go to the gym, a lot of bodybuilders and people who really take care of themselves. They become addicted to it.
Yes.
Not a bad thing, but when I question them, I often find out the same thing as the overweight kid. I was picked on as a child, or I had self-esteem issues. I don't like the way I looked. They become addicted and get so big. If you look at the really high-ranking bodybuilders,
I know.
They get so big that people look at them and say, that's disgusting. Just like we might unfortunately comment on overweight people.
Yes.
Do you see the contrast in that?
Yes, yes.
The unconscious mind goes into such an addiction with the payoff that it takes it to the vast extreme.
Mm-hmm.
If you reflect back on the problems that you have in your life, we don't have to talk about them, of course, your own personal things. Does that make you aware of more things?
Absolutely. That's why I got silent.
Yeah, very interesting, right?
Very interesting, yes.
Just by understanding this can start to shape the way that you deal with your own problems. So when you're stuck in your office or trying to figure out work with clients, or you've got other things going in your life, you've got to think, what is the payoff I'm getting from this? Mm-hmm. If I find myself eating dessert every night and I want to give that up, what is the payoff I'm getting? Is it because I'm killing some boredness with it? I enjoy rewarding myself. Okay, it's a bit of social time with my partner or my kids. It's something we like to do as a family. Now, it doesn't say this is going to clear it up because these are only your conscious interpretations. It can never really get to the payoff. But it's just good to know to question yourself about this, just to see if something does arise from it.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people, you'll probably find this yourself, when we have something we don't like in our life, what do we tend to do? We distract ourselves from it.
Yes.
Now, what is distraction doing? Well, the unconscious mind says, no, you need to listen to me. Here's your payoff. I'm going to give it to you 10 times as worse because you're not paying attention to me. Mm-hmm. You distract yourself from the junk food, the cigarettes, the late nights out, the drinking, the addictions, the phobias.
Yeah.
And it's like saying to the unconscious mind, you know what? You're not working for me anymore. I'm not working for you anymore. You need to work for me. The unconscious mind is a lot more powerful than our awareness we put on it.
No, yes.
So we find ourselves in our own programs and go, oh my God, I'm doing this again. I thought I stopped that. I can't believe I'm doing it again. Now at that very point, you get negative again. The unconscious mind goes, I don't like this. I'm going to make the payoff even worse or better in my eyes, so don't go through this again. Do you see how I make your problems worse?
Yeah, and then it grows, yes.
It snowballs out of control.
Yes.
Okay. Does that make sense so far?
Absolutely, yes. Okay. I see that subconscious mind is giving a payoff, but there is no clear cut if it's payoff. The outcome will be positive or negative. The subconscious mind has absolutely no interest what's going to be the outcome and how it's going to affect you in the future. It's just now. So what I'm trying to say, there is no black and white answer here that is something good for you or bad for you.
Yes.
It's right now, at the moment, this is to keep you safe.
Yes.
What you need.
It's the only thing the unconscious mind could consider as quickly as possible.
Yes.
If it was to draw its time out, spend a couple of hours thinking of what's the best, spend a couple of hours rehearsing and trying to find the best steps, that's a couple of hours away from protecting you.
Yes.
It goes, as quickly as possible, finds the best thing it can think of, although at the time it seems very reasonable and it helps us, like we get something from it.
Yes.
The days, months, weeks, years later, that old unconscious payoff, or what is commonly referred to as an old program, exists over and over and over and over again, and all we get is the negative symptoms of it because it no longer serves us at this point. The unconscious mind does not reason with time.
No.
Everything is happening now. So the way you are as, let's say, like a 30-year-old person, the unconscious payoff was set when you were 10 years old in that social group learning how to smoke for the first time. It doesn't work with time in the way that we work with it consciously. So we need to relieve the unconscious mind of that old unconscious program or that unconscious payoff, still allow the unconscious mind to make a new one, but without the negative side effects. And that's where the parts integration, or the two parts, go in one way. Consciously you say, I want this, but the unconscious mind says, well, if you have that, you're going to be unsafe. You're not going to get that.
Yes.
That's why it's very hard to pinpoint our problems, because we can only guess.
No, that makes sense, yes.
Okay. So with that in mind, let's look at the next part of this.
Mm-hmm.
We now need to work out, let's say we've got our client coming in front of us. Let's work with the example we worked at before, which was the young boy coming in to see us who's overweight. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's one clear way to know that a parts integration would be the best technique you could choose at that time. The way your client expresses their problem will let you know that a parts integration is best for that very moment. Okay? And they'll express themselves like this. You've asked your client what the problem is. They're sitting in front of you and they say something like this. I want to lose weight, but I really enjoy the junk food.
Yeah.
Have you heard something similar to that before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you probably have it in your life.
In a different way, but yes, absolutely.
Have different content. Okay. How do we know, knowing that a parts integration or parts conflict means that the conscious mind wants one thing, but it doesn't align with the unconscious payoff? How do we know that that's occurring in that very sentence? Which is, I want to lose weight, but I enjoy eating the junk food.
Well, because it's two opposite things. You cannot lose weight without stop eating junk food.
Excellent. So we can already hear there's a conflict in the syntax doesn't flow naturally.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What is the conscious information telling us? And what is the unconscious information telling us? And how do we know which part is which? What is conscious and what is unconscious? And why do you think it would be important to understand which is which?
Conscious would be, I want to lose weight, because it's very clear. Clear. There are clear steps how to do it. I will stop junk food. I'm going to go to gym. I'm going to do this and this and this and this.
Yep.
And then subconsciously, nope, you're not going to do this because in the morning I make you tired, or I make you hungry, or we're going to drive purposely next to junk food outlet. And yeah, so that is subconscious. Yeah.
What lets us know clearly you're 100% correct is the negation in the middle, the but.
Yeah.
Usually what you'll hear, it will sound like this, and I'll play this with the role play as well, which is, you know what, Beata, I really want to lose weight, but I really, really enjoy the junk food.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference in tone from those two parts?
The other one is very clearly subconscious. You really, really feel
there's a lot of emphasis in there. There's a lot of emotion, and you're probably going to see a lot of unconscious moments. Yeah. And the fact I've negated it is basically saying my conscious mind wants to lose weight, but that's what I tell everyone.
Yeah, it's easy to say.
Yeah, the unconscious mind is saying, but the payoff is I really enjoy the junk food because of the X, Y, and Z, and it's the X, Y, and Z we need to find out.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, let me give you this to make it even easier. A good way to tell what is unconscious information, and this is just a side note in case you don't hear your client properly or you don't watch the unconscious moments, is to remember this. The unconscious mind loves simplicity. It is easier, or it makes more sense to the unconscious mind, and it's easier for you to sit on the couch and eat a bag of donuts than go to the gym and physically exhaust yourself.
Okay.
The unconscious mind loves the road less traveled. Meaning that when you wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. from the day before saying, I'm going to go to the gym, I really want to go, it is so much easier just to roll over in a nice warm bed, turn off the alarm and go back to sleep for an hour. Other than getting up in the freezing cold, getting your shoes on, having a coffee, hyping yourself up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to a gym that you might not even enjoy and get sweaty and exhausted.
Yes.
I know which one I'd prefer to do, but however, I know by doing that, I'm not getting the things I want in life.
No.
Does that clear it up?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
If you're ever wondering what is unconscious, think what is more easy to do. It's easy to keep smoking than to quit.
Yes.
It's easier to stay overweight than try and lose it.
Yes.
It is easy to say no than stand up in front of a crowd and talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
We all have this as a part of our life. It's easy to say I want to make $1 million, but it's a lot easier to spend all day watching YouTube, figuring out how to do it and watching people that are doing it. Because you're looking for the magic key. You're looking for the magic program.
Yes.
And you say, you know what, I'm going to spend this time studying. There's nothing against studying. You have to do this stuff. But then you become so addicted. Why? Because you can never quite find the answers you're looking for. But that's the unconscious mind confusing you and keeping you locked into staying on the seat because it's easier to watch than actually do.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, a lot of sense, absolutely.
So if you find yourself locked in that position, that's your unconscious mind doing what it thinks is necessary according to its own decisions. It's really making the unconscious mind seem like the bad guy, but it's not.
Well, there is no bad or good in
exactly. It just is what it is.
It is easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our goal with the parts integration, and this is going to be just the wrap up of this session, and when we come back to our next session, we'll start to get into the technique and we'll do a couple of demonstrations, things like that, is to understand that when a client expresses their problem to you through the vice of, I want this, but this, or this never happens because I'm not this, or this is too hard because of this, okay, you've got to figure out firstly, what is the unconscious mind trying to tell you? What could possibly be the payoff? Okay, and your goal with a parts integration and with a bit of extra hypnotic maneuvers put into this, we're not going to do the classical parts integration, which I'll talk to you about on the next session, because we miss out on all the really good bits that a parts integration can have. We need to explore and find out what is the payoff, allow that payoff to emerge itself, and then rearrange the payoff, and then lock it back in. That's the life cycle of a parts integration.
Yes.
Okay. So any questions about what we did and even just the examples I gave? Hopefully that should start to make you more aware of things in your own life, but also your client's life. Any questions at all?
No, not really. It's really very clear.
How do you feel now about a parts integration, knowing what you know about it now?
Excited.
Excellent.
Excited. Just one thing.
Yes.
Generally, with the subconscious payoff, or whatever the subconsciously behavior we're doing, isn't it that we're justifying to protect this behavior in a very strong way? Not sure if I make sense. So if I say I'm smoking, and you ask me, why would you do that? Then I'm going to give you a million excuses why I do that. But I will not be smoking. But I'm doing that because blah, 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 blah.
Yep. And where do your excuses come from? What part of the mind is that?
Conscious.
So why do those excuses exist? Because of the unconscious payoff.
Unconscious payoff.
We can get into the metaphysics of it and say, we are protecting our excuses. We are becoming our excuses. Our excuses are become. You can go into the real technical terms, but to break it down really, really simply, like the way I like to do it, is because the unconscious mind the unconscious payoff is getting protected because it's going outside of what the unconscious mind is protecting you from.
Say that again.
Okay. I'll give you another clear example. Let's say you were scared of sharks.
Yep.
Okay. But you had no previous experience to know the sharks were bad. Yeah. Why would you get scared then?
Because other people got eaten by sharks.
There you go. You've seen it on TV. You've heard about it in the newspapers. You've heard people talk about it. And your unconscious mind goes, well, I don't want you having that. And that's only if you get an experience from it. Let's say you watch Jaws. And you got really, really scared from it.
Yeah.
The unconscious mind goes, well, sharks are bad. Never go swimming with sharks.
No.
Logically, that makes sense. But over time, what tends to happen? You start getting afraid of water.
Yeah.
You start getting afraid of going to the beach.
Yeah.
And then possibly, this is just an extreme example, you, let's use the weight example, find yourself finding a partner who loves to go to the beach. And you hate it, but you love your partner. And then at some level, you start to think, well, the unconscious mind says, well, how can I get out of this, getting you to go to the beach? I don't want you to go. Let's get you to start eating lots of food so you feel embarrassed in your bathing suit.
And you have more excuses not to go there.
You have more reasons to stay indoors.
Yes.
Which is, I don't look good in a bathing suit. I don't want to go to the beach. I'll get sunburnt. I've got this, I've got this. But the underlying thing is, you watched Jaws when you were younger, got an experience, the unconscious mind made the payoff. And now we call these excuses. It snowballs. And the excuses get attached, and the more attached, the more things come into it with life experience, because the unconscious mind is just grasping at straws at that point, because it goes into overprotection mode. Why? Because you're going against what it wants from you, but you don't know you're doing it.
Wow.
You see how confusing that is from one little thought?
Yes.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Now you can talk about excuses. At the end of the day, it's all an unconscious payoff. If you have a problem, it's because you have a payoff. If you don't have a problem, it's because the payoff that was created serves you, or you've overcome the payoff. That's why we can have a broken heart for a year and then get over it and still go out and date other people. But I know other people that get a broken heart once and think, well, all men are bastards. All women are, excuse my language here, bitches. I've got friends like that. From one bad experience, what do? They justify it and push that example in an extreme value across the whole world of people. Now they hate everybody.
Yes.
It's just because the unconscious mind chose the wrong thing.
And it's a payoff to keep you safe.
It has to be a payoff. There's a payoff for protection, safety, and ease, comfort, simpleton.
Comfort.
Like I said, it's a lot easier to sit on the couch and eat donuts or McDonald's in the morning than to go to the gym and possibly get embarrassed, see yourself in the mirror, run into somebody you don't want to run into and them seeing you're overweight.
Yeah.
Go to the gym, exhaust yourself, pay money, go in the heat, go in the winter, buy protein powders, diets.
Yeah.
It's a long list of examples, all from one little experience of maybe someone at school looking at you, laughing at you, and saying you're a little bit overweight.
Yeah. So generally it happens from childhood.
Yeah, it can happen all throughout your life.
That's
but
what
the reason I bring up childhood, because that's when our most experience are. That's when the biggest things are. We go to school. We have to learn how to make friends. We get either ostracized at school or get accepted. Yeah. For boys, probably when they first have a fight at school, they get their heart broken at school. They get told off by the teacher. They have a bad report card. They go to house parties. They do all these sorts of things where there's so much learning going on. But as adults, we're not doing as much as we did as children.
No.
We're more family orientated and we stick to our family. We're not out there trying to make a lot of new friends. We're not out there going to house parties.
No.
But to talk about this brings up another interesting point. Do you have people that you know that, although they're adult, they're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, all they talk about is how good high school was?
Yeah.
They live in the past?
Yes.
And everything they do, they justify to that. It could even be with an extreme example of a relationship.
What do you mean extreme example?
So example of a relationship, which is, let's say you have a friend who has not dated in 10 years. Yeah. And you say to them, well, why don't you go on a date? Why don't you do something for yourself? Buy a nice dress or a nice suit, go out and meet somebody. I can't, because the only person I've ever loved was 10 years ago and she was my high school sweetheart or something. I can't find anyone else if it's not her.
Yeah.
Or him. What's happening right now is the payoff they got from high school still exists and they drag it on into the future and spend more time living in the past than they do the present.
And that will be also the people who behave like teenagers.
There and they go. Because they're locked into that.
Yes.
They can't get past it because that's the only good times they had in their life.
Yes.
And at that time, they got a very positive payoff. But the unconscious mind hasn't worked it out that they're not in high school anymore.
No, but they still behave like high school
They
kids.
still behave. They still sometimes wear the clothes.
Yes, yes.
Does that make more sense? You've probably heard and seen these people.
Going nightclubs in the 50s, yes.
There you go. Let me give you another example. Being that I live in Queensland, we're very sport orientated, as I know Melbourne is as well. How often do you see, and this is not a knock at fans, how often do you see football or AFL fans who are extremely overweight still wearing their high school jerseys at games?
All the time.
All the time. And again, this is not a knock. Okay, absolutely not. You'll probably find those people are so sport orientated but don't play anymore.
No.
Through various injuries or other things, but are trying to relive their highlighted moments in life where they were accepted as a teenager and maybe the teenage heartthrob from playing football or AFL in high school.
Yes.
I have friends like this in my social circle, and that's fine. It's just what they do.
Yes.
And every conversation I have, they remind me of how good they were at high school, how good high school was for them, this and this. But the time they're having right now is terrible. They hate their life, but they still love what they did back then. They still wear the clothes, they still wear the jerseys, it's all they talk about. When we go to sporting events, they are the world's leading expert. But my idea is, well, if you're that good and you love it so much, why don't you play it? Because there has been a payoff that doesn't allow them to play it anymore from various reasons, so they just watch it and become the ultimate fan. Because they're still getting something from it, it's just not the extreme they want it. Does that
Yes,
all
that
make
makes
sense?
a lot of sense. The whole world start making sense.
Yeah. Okay, all from one little payoff. It's just to show you how important those payoffs are.
Yes, that's shaping our lives, our
It
behavior.
really does.
Yeah,
So your goal until we catch up next time, and this is an important thing, something I do on a very regular occasion, it's just interesting, I think, to become a professional therapist or professional helper that we are, it's really good to understand these things for yourself.
Yes.
Is to find something in your life that you really don't like and just not try and figure out when it first started and how to resolve it. Just be curious about what do you think you're getting from it outside of what you consciously think. Let's use a junk food example again. Let's say you find yourself eating dessert when you really don't want to. Mm-hmm. And you could sit there and say, well, it's the taste, it's this and this, it's just the social thing, it's with my kids, with my family, all that sort of stuff. You could be very much right, but just contemplate, why do I keep doing this? I wonder what I'm actually getting from this. And from just contemplating it deeply, an aha moment might come out and the power reveal itself. And then all of a sudden you think, oh my God, I know why I'm doing this. It was because when I was 15 years old, the first date I went on, he bought me some ice cream. It was a very special time for me, and I want to remember that. Just as an example.
Without you even asking me, I was thinking, I want to analyze my whole life when I finish here.
Yeah, I'll give you an exercise that I used to do. When I say used to, I still do it now, just in another form, is when I was working on myself very intently because I was growing my business, I was a therapist, I was doing other things in my life I wanted, I would write out a good 6 months of my life. You know, what I did, what I accomplished, my highlights, my low times. And I'd write maybe a page of just my story summed up in a page. And then I would go over it and find all the negatives and try and figure out why that exists. And if it still exists 6 months later. And if it does, that lets me know that's a real problem in my life and it's not just something I think is a problem. If I see the same thing occurring over and over and over again, because that's something that definitely needs work.
Yes.
It's not just a I should goal. It's a, well, I'm seeing the recurring pattern over. How can I fix that?
Yes.
Make sense?
That's a good exercise, yes.
It's a very good exercise for your own personal development, just to figure out what is actually happening in your mind. And when you start to think in these ways, you're creating an unconscious relationship with yourself that possibly the unconscious mind sees the value in you doing it and goes on autopilot and does it for you. Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be excellent.
Don't we call people who have this in their life, we call them lucky?
Yes.
They're always lucky. It seems that whenever they put their mind to a project, it always seems to work out for them.
Yes.
It's because the payoff is different to them, or they've done something about the recurring things that are happening in their life. They're working on their real problems and not the, I think these are a problem. So this is a good exercise for yourself, and just to see what comes up. It's to really grasp and understand how your mind works.
Yes.
All of this from just this understanding of a parts integration is not something we tell our clients, but you need to understand when you communicate to your client, this is what your client is communicating. As soon as I give you a problem, they're communicating the payoff to you. You just have to listen out and try and figure out what it is.
Yes.
So any questions at all?
No.
Are you sure?
It was fascinating.
Excellent. I'm very glad. So what we're going to do next time on our first session back with this, will be the second session of this program, is we're going to use a real life example. So I will ask you to bring something along with you that involves something like, I want this, but there's this.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to run you through the classical. It's a little bit harder to do the classical version over Skype that we're using the medium right now, which is why I want to show you how to take away the obvious mechanical parts integration that involves setting up a client's hands in a certain place, that involves visualizing symbols in some cases. I don't want to do the obvious. I want to show you how to do these parts integrations in a very conversational style, because people's parts express themselves very, very often as a hypnotist when people say things like this: I want to book in your session, but I can't afford it. Wouldn't it be nice just to have a conversation with them, align up their unconscious goals and their conscious goals, let go of the old pattern so they can come and see you. Ultimately, they get something and you get paid for your work. So it's a great way to increase your sales as well.
Yes, absolutely.
That's where I want to take us for next time. So bring that problem along with you. We'll start off with a demonstration. Then I'll talk you through how you set it up. And it's a very easy process now that you understand how it actually works.
Yep.
Okay.
Looking forward to it. Yes.
Excellent. So we'll catch up this time next week and we'll get into that. But please bring a problem along with you. But until then, just listen out. Do that exercise I told you. But also listen out for when people talk to you. Listen, are they expressing two programs at the same time? Is the part integration expressing itself? You'd be very surprised how often people talk in those terms.
Oh, well.
Okay. So we'll catch up this time next week.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott.
You're very welcome. Bye for now.